Hello, Dr. Goda.
Hello.
Hi, long time no see.
Yeah, 1 week.
A week. Welcome. Welcome to your listeners. Welcome to our lecture series about cultural diversions. And Dr. Skoda is our invested guest to deliver this series lecture. I noticed Professor Zhang is also present here today. Welcome, Professor Zhang. So today we know that the topic for today is about cultural values. And Dr. Goda was born in Egypt and got his education in Hong Kong, and he has a wide experience of cultural values. And let us listen to what he has to tell. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you all. Okay, let me first share my PPT with you. So I think now you can see my PowerPoint. If I'm not mistaken, you should be able to see my PowerPoint now, right? Can you see the PowerPoint?
Sure, we can see it.
Yeah.
It was not a full screen yet, though.
Sorry?
It was not a full screen. A full screen, yeah.
Is it full screen now?
Not really.
No, but I'm sharing it anyhow. Okay, let me enlarge it. How about that?
Wonderful, wonderful.
Now, okay, all right. I didn't know that I could adjust actually the control the size, so it should be full now, I hope. Okay. So today we'll talk about cultural values. And today is actually our third lecture, and we are continuing to talk about this cross-cultural studies. I think I better share it like this because to enable you to see the full screen. Now it should be fine, right? Is it big enough now, the screen?
Not a full screen, thank you.
I'm making it full screen on my, just a minute. Enter full screen. How about now?
I think you maybe need to click the play, yeah.
Okay. All right. Hold on, please. Give me just a couple of seconds. How about now?
Bingo.
All right. So let's start with this quotation by Mahatma Gandhi. He says, and please pay attention to the words in bold. Your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values become your destiny. And today we'll focus on your values, on our cultural values. Actually, these cultural values differ from one person to another, from one nation to another, one culture to another. Take for example, the moon. When we look at the moon, different people have different perception. For example, some people may see a human face in the moon, look at the moon and see a human face there, like the Native Americans, for example. Or see a rabbit like Japanese or Native Americans would see a human face, or a lady fleeing her husband, the Chinese myth, a woman weaving in the salmons. Other symbols in our society also would give different interpretation and different connotations and meanings, like number 4, for example, in Chinese culture. We know the sound of number 4 is same as the sound of the word death. So many people would not like to to utter that number, or to choose a telephone number that includes number 4, or even sometimes some buildings, they, even though the 4th floor is there, but they don't have it in the escalator, inside the elevator, the lift. The same thing you can say about number 13 in Western culture. Today we'll take America as an example of Western culture, just as an example. So when we say America, it must have probably also shared values by most of the Western countries. Also the sign V, which means victory. In the West and in the America in general, we know that Churchill, after the Second World War, when he returned to England, he made this sign, the sign V, indicating victory. And but the same sign V, that sign indicates happiness and good luck to the Japanese high school students. The color of flowers also, they may have different connotations in different cultures, like white color, the white flowers, they indicate again death and sorrow in the Chinese and generally Asian cultures. But the yellow color indicates the same meaning in other cultures, like the Iranian, the Persian, the Mexican, and so on. So actually, perception is how we perceive the world, is what makes us different from other nations and other people. So like Hermann Hesse, the German novelist, he said, there is no reality except the one contained within us. How you perceive the world is your reality, which is different from other people's reality. So it is the world within us, and this is how we perceive the world in terms of symbols, ideas, events, ideologies, and all of this. How we perceive the world is what makes us different from other people. Take, for example, the food. We may have different impressions about the food. For example, if some people who are vegetarians, they don't eat meat, and if they see somebody eating meat, they might not feel it a civilized act, for example, because they would feel pity for the animal itself, for the animal as a living being. Different nations also, some people they would eat cow, some not, like some Buddhists, they don't eat cow, they don't eat beef, correct? They don't eat beef, they don't slaughter beef and slaughter cows, and for Muslims and Jews, they don't eat pork, so they don't rear any pigs in the first place. Look, for example, at this picture, the bullfights. Actually, it's almost the main sport in Spain, and it's a very popular sport there. But for many people, they find it, and I'm one of them, they find this sport a very brutal sport and very cruel. I remember seeing a picture online of one of these ox who was wounded, lethally wounded, with the spear in his body, and he had the chance actually to kill his master. Yet he just looked at him with tears in his eyes, as though the bull was asking him, why all this? Why do you want to kill me? So while this sport in Spain is so popular and people love it and get so enthusiastic about it, but to some people it's barbarian sport. So we are different because we perceive the world we live in differently. We interpret symbols differently. and also the same thing might have, as I said, might have different connotations based on our different ideologies, different traditions, and so on. For example, one of the experiments, the social experiments done in America by American sociologists and anthropologists is to let some Mexican and American children watch games of bullfights and baseball games. Of course, the American kids, they were enthralled watching the baseball game, while the Mexican kids watched the bullfights, because this is how they were brought up, and this is the popular sports they know. That's why actually we see what we are trained, say, consciously or unconsciously, what we are trained to admire and to practice. Also another experiment is to let children, Mexican children and Caucasian children, play and act naturally, behave naturally in their own way, and to see the reaction of their mothers. So the Caucasian mothers looked at their children assertive behavior positively, while the Native American mothers did not appreciate this kind of behavior from their children, and they considered it mischievous, and they considered it like they are misbehaving. So as De Monte says in this quote here, as is well known, Americans and most Europeans prize frankness, detailed presentations, and lively debate based on facts as well as assumptions. In contrast, for more than 1,000 years, the Japanese and I would say the Oriental culture in general were programmed to speak publicly only in tatime terms, meaning in social expectation mode, and to speak in the way other people expect them to speak, and to say what other people expect them to say. But as for their own true thoughts and ideas, they would share only in private. But this is not the case when we talk about Western culture in general. The kids, since they are small, they are advised and encouraged to speak up in public and express themselves, as I had said earlier, maybe the first and the second lecture. So the value of youth, for example, as I said also before, is different in one culture and from the other. Like some cultures, especially in the West, they would value, especially in America, they would value youth, while in Oriental cultures, they would value elderly more, the elderly culture. They would respect the elderly people more. They would never put their parents, for example, in an elderly house and so on. This quote say that young people view elderly people as less desirable interaction partners than other young or middle-aged people. In Africa, for example, age is an asset, and the older one gets, the wiser he becomes. And so elderly people get more respected by age. This kind of culture is not really, we don't really see it in the West. But again, I have to remind myself and remind you that we are talking about the mainstream, about the main things that characterize a culture. But that doesn't mean that this description or this characterization really applies to every individual. This is impossible. So you may find many people in the West who respect elderly people, and vice versa. You may find many people in the East who may not respect the elderly, and so on. So we are just talking about the main characteristics and the mainstream culture, the main characteristic that really color and express the main culture and mainstream culture. So perception is actually, as I said, is selective. There are so many stimuli. We are surrounded, especially in our time now, we are surrounded by so many interesting things in our life, so many. And all this actually take a lot from our concentration and distracts us. Sometimes I log or I go online and I trying to search for something, for example, and while I'm trying to search for something, sometimes I forget what I was trying to search for, because so many attractions on online. You open one page and then suddenly you forget what you wanted to do, or because something else got your attention. We are surrounded by so many stimuli. But what attracts our attention more is what we are let's say, programmed to like since we were small. It's like we filter these stimuli and we only select what's interesting to us to pay attention to it more than other stuff. So it's learned and determined by culture since we were small. We learn it from our society. We are not born with this perceptual patterns. No, it's something we learn in society. We learn from our parents, from the family, from the society, from the school, and so on. And all these perceptions, which really the core of our culture and our cultural values, stored within each human being in the form of beliefs and values. And of course, belief is also a sort of value. A belief is a sort of value too. So what are these beliefs? What is the meaning of belief? Belief is an accepted truth, or things you accept as truth. You believe in something. That means you accept something as truth. Sometimes you don't even need to try to prove it right. Sometimes you don't have even proof that it's correct, that it's the only truth, yet you believe in it. That's why it's belief. This is your belief. And they are usually reflected in your actions and communication behavior. For example, take this sun-tanned skin. Sun-tanned skin, some people may consider it a healthy or a sign for being healthy. And they spend a lot of money just to get tanned, especially in America. But in some other countries, to have this dark skin is a sign of lower social status. And so it depends on where you live, what kind of society you live in, and what kind of culture that dominates that society. The same thing can be said about our religious and cultural sources as criteria. When you believe in something and you have a source for that thing, you don't need even to convince other people of that source. You believe in it, and that's it. And these beliefs, our beliefs, they are our criteria for making rules and for resolving conflicts, for resolving problems, for passing judgments, and so on. They are our criteria for making our own rules. If we try to explore these values, values are shared ideas about what is true, right, and beautiful which underline cultural patterns and guide society in response to the physical and social environment. And it's always, these values always come in dichotomies, like something versus something else versus its dichotomy, evil versus good, dangerous versus safe, ugly versus beautiful, and so on and so on and so forth. We all have values, and according to these values, we behave in a certain way, we think in a certain way, we talk in a certain way. It really influences the way we behave and also influences our choices in life. These values are classified as primary, secondary, and tertiary. Primary is the values that are worth dying for. Like, for example, defending your country, defending your family. These kind of values that are worth dying for. You would sacrifice your life for. The secondary values are the values that may be related to your extended family, for example, not the nuclear family, the extended family, to the clan, to the society, maybe, to your friends. That tertiary family is, again, it's more general values that you would not sacrifice your life for, but you still care about. There are also, for example, the public expressions that now we're still talking about values and how they are different from one culture, and they have different connotations in another. Like, for example, this American proverb, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. This comes in total opposition to the Chinese social values. In the Chinese social and Oriental, when I say Chinese, again, it also applies to Japanese, Korean, and the Oriental culture in general. The main culture there is not to be noisy and not to speak up in public and express yourself boldly in public, to be modest, for example. So this it's completely the opposite of this American proverb and American culture, Western culture in general. The squeaky wheels gets the grease. Again, this when we talk about values, cultural values, you need to know the cultural values of the society you live in. For example, this customer service in Hong Kong or in Japan, they are very important. And any company, either in Japan or in Hong Kong, really takes this customer service very seriously. And you as a client, if you have a problem, for example, you're using an internet and the internet disconnects, for example, or whatever, and you call the company and you complain, that company takes it seriously and takes your complaint seriously, and because they don't want to lose you as a customer. And this is something I really I've been through many times after living in Hong Kong for so many years. I can confirm this point that yes, customer service here is very important, and all companies take it seriously, and your opinion and your feedback as a customer always matters. Maybe in other countries, this customer service it's not that important, and the company doesn't take it really so seriously. So these values starts from belief that this belief is a source of value. This value influences your attitude, and your attitude also has its reflection on your behavior. For example, your belief, let me give you an example. If you believe in material possessions and you believe in material gains, So that means you will value the type of education that will yield and in the end will bring to you a good paying job. So this is the belief will lead to this, to your attitude, your value. You value this kind of education. So you would have a positive attitude towards this type of education. This type of education that will help you get a good paying job. And that will reflect on your behavior, which is working hard in class, attending classes on time and working hard in class and so on. So cultural patterns are systems of integrated beliefs and values that provide a model for perceiving the world. All your values, your ideas and your beliefs, all these come under, let's say, a general umbrella of these cultural patterns. The dominant values of a culture may not be shared. As I just said, when we talk about the cultural values, we are just talking about the mainstream culture. That doesn't cover every individual in that culture. So I may read something about a society that I'm well familiar with, and I may disagree. I say, oh, no, it's not exactly like that. Okay, again, the research done by all these anthropologists, they also talk about the traditional culture. And as we know, culture is a dynamic thing. It keeps changing. It's always in the process of changing. What we say now about this striking dichotomy between Oriental and Occidental cultures, always in the process of changing. And we find that, for example, in an Oriental society, they start to adopt a lot of Western methodologies and Western ideas because of globalization in general, as I said last week. And also because some nations, they have so many ethnic groups, like in the USA and Russia, they have over 125 ethnic groups. So to pass just one statement, a general statement that would cover all these different ethnic groups, that would be very unscientific. It's also the same thing if we talk about China, with so many also ethnic groups in China, we expect different cultures. The North have different culture from the South, and different food, different dialect, and different behavior also sometimes. So we are talking only about, as I said, the main stream. In the Encyclopedia of American Religions, they identified more than or almost 1,200 different religions in the different religious sects in the United States. So these cultural patterns, they are integrated, meaning valuing the elderly gets attached to other values like respect and decision-making. Integrated meaning here that when you value something, it has its shadow, its reflection on, and it triggers other behaviors from you. Like valuing the elderly, for example, will make you show respect to old people, respect their decisions, and also will influence your own decisions when it comes to dealing with them. Like if you are from any Oriental country and a very traditional person, you have that traditional thoughts, you would never put your parents in an elderly house, just as an example. And it's also, as I said, dynamic because of this globalization spreading almost the one culture in the whole world. And now we see a series of shops almost in every country around the world, like chains of McDonald's, KFC, for example, and other famous brands of clothes, perfumes, and so on. Also, the women movement also made a lot of changes in the societies, not only in the West but also in some Eastern countries, where women started to gain a lot of their rights. And but when we say dynamic, when we say these cultural patterns and cultural values, and culture in general is dynamic and always in the process of change, we should also remember the deep structure of culture that we talked about last time, that the family and the religion and the society, the state you live in, the country you live in. These are the deep structure of culture that they leave a long-term and deepened influence on the person, and they don't change so easily. And again, when we talk about this mainstream culture, there are always contradictions. Like, for example, when we talk about American values, and we say that one of the integral values in the American society and American culture is equality, which is true. But how about the racism we see in the USA? Definitely, nobody can deny that there is racism still exists in the USA. It contradicts this integral value, which is equality. So racism is also there. But when we say equality, when we stress on this equality as an integral and central value in the American culture, again, we are talking about what people aspire to have. In the last 300 years, for example, what the American people wanted to have in their society, what they considered to be one of the main features of their culture. Of course, there are always contradictions, but we focus on the main features that define that culture. And that's why when something happens against that, they always say that this is not an American, this is not our America, this is not American, this is not part of our culture. So when we try to compare between two different patterns of culture, so what should we include and what should we leave out? What elements, what factors, what cultural values should we include in our study, in our comparison, and what we should leave out? And there are three reasons why we examine cultural patterns. One, we carry our culture wherever we go. So actually, as I said before, we study other people's culture, not only to understand their culture, but also to understand our culture. Our culture is with us all the time. And because it's with us all the time, sometimes we are not aware of it. Sometimes we need like a reminder to draw our attention to see how we behave, because our culture with us all the time, and they are always influence us and influence the way we behave and the way we react to people's behavior too. Also, examining our cultural patterns reveals overlooked values, reveals overlooked values that we overlook because they are part of our daily life. And it's important to compare these different cultural patterns in order to understand each other and to communicate well across different cultures. So today I will talk about the American culture as an example of Western culture in general. And so most of what I will say about America may also apply to the Western culture, especially the Western countries. The individualism, for example. Individualism is the first thing that may define Western culture in general. And the individualism, when we say individualism, it's usually defined as freedom. And John Locke, the English philosopher who lived in the 17th and the first few years of the 18th century, I think he died in 1704, he actually advocated the liberty for the individual, respecting the individual choice, especially religious freedom. And he considered each person as unique being and so different from other individuals. And this reminds me of also a saying by Oscar Wilde: "Be yourself, everybody else is taken." This stress on individualism is what defines Western culture in general and American culture in particular. For example, the first settlers, the first European settlers who arrived to America, to the New World at that time, and they arrived with their desire to be different from the culture they had left behind. What they had left behind is the British culture, which pays so much attachment to, for example, the past and to traditions, and with so many rules. But those first settlers, they wanted to express themselves, to prove themselves as individuals, and to prove their individual dreams. And later on, they called America the land of dreams. The American dreams, which we may talk about it soon. The second thing that defines, the second feature and characteristic that defines the American culture is the equal opportunities. Equal. We find it in the Declaration of Independence. All men are created equal. This is in the Declaration of Independence. And in the Constitution, the US Constitution, we read, "No title of nobility shall be granted to the United States, or shall be granted in the United States," should be in. So Abraham Lincoln said in 1860, "We do wish to allow the humblest man an equal chance to get rich with everybody else." So equality rather than hierarchy. The hierarchy was the social norm in Britain. So when those first settlers left England, left European lands and arrived to the New World and started to establish themselves there, they left this hierarchy system behind, and they wanted to establish a new society that value individualism and equal opportunity. Again, as I said, as I talked just a few minutes ago, I said that although this equal opportunity is a central value in the American culture, but there are a lot of contradictions, and sometimes there is no equal opportunities at all until this time. Actually, even until this time, we see that there is no full equality between men and women in the American society itself. And of course, there is discrimination, a lot of discrimination still in the American society based on color and sex and education and social status and so on. And the third thing is material acquisition. Material acquisition. Stewart and Bennett say Americans consider it almost a right to be materially well off and physically comfortable. Americans are obsessed with this luxurious life. They want to have big house and have to lead a comfortable life. And maybe there is nothing wrong with that. Of course, maybe the only thing is to pay too much attention to that and to make it your only goal in life. Some people, they pay so much attention and to this material acquisition. And this all these are reflected in this what's known as American dream, the American dream. And one of the best novels, American novels, is called Great Gatsby. It's considered maybe by many critics the best American novel, and by many critics as one of the best 100 novels ever written in English language. And this novel, actually, it's against the American dream. The message of the novel is that the failure of what is known as American dream, that this material acquisition is not everything, because Great Gatsby in the novel, actually he couldn't marry the girl he loved because he was poor, and she married a rich guy. So he left, and he returned a few years later, so rich, mysteriously rich. Nobody knew at that time. Later on, we knew how he got rich, but he returned as a rich guy, so rich, and he tried to get her admiration. But at the end, still, he did not get her, and he was killed, and so on. So all his wealth did not get him his dream. That girl was his dream. He could not get her, even though he became so wealthy and rich. So the novel is talking about the failure of American dream. The fourth characteristic and feature here is science and technology. It's written on the National Museum of American History in Washington, D.C. Modern civilization depends on science. Modern civilization depends on science. And we can trace this back to the Enlightenment age, or the age of reason in the 18th century, when actually the scientific revolution started in the 17th century with the writings of Copernicus and the writings of Galileo. Copernicus, his book was actually in the 15th century or 16th century, 1543, 1543, and Galileo in 1632, he was executed, and his book came in that year. And also the writing of Isaac Newton in 1687. But the real scientific revolution really started with the writings of Isaac Newton, and all this brought its fruit in the 18th century when science prevailed. And because at that time the church was the main enemy of science, so the church also became the main enemy of the Enlightenment, as Enlightenment here as a movement, as a philosophical movement. And that really shed its light on religion in general, that the philosophers of that age, they directed their hatred of the church to their hatred of religion in general. All this, we can trace this focus on science in our modern time back to the 18th century and the age of reason and the Enlightenment age, when they believed that all problems can be solved by science. And this belief still exists in our time. But again, there are many other thinkers who think otherwise. Science cannot solve all our problems. Science cannot answer all our questions. And this is also what Mary Shelley tried to say in her novel Frankenstein. In her novel Frankenstein, the Dr. Frankenstein is not actually the name of the monster, right? Frankenstein is the name of the doctor who made the monster. And he wanted to create like a perfect human being using his scientific knowledge, but in the end he created a monster, and things got out of his hand, and he felt guilty, and his main desire after that was to kill that monster in order to save humanity from his scientific creature, from what he invented. So what Mary Shelley wanted to say, that science cannot solve our problems, and that also the main attitude of the poets of Romanticism. The poets of Romanticism, again, Romanticism as a movement, it started as a reaction to this Enlightenment, to depend solely on reason, on the mind, on science. Science is not everything. And even one of the, actually, I would not be exaggerating if I said the most important philosopher in the age of reason, in the Enlightenment era, Kant, Immanuel Kant, when he started writing a Critique of Pure Reason, he after he finished the book, he ended up saying that reason, mind cannot solve all the problems and cannot know the absolute truth. There are some truths that are beyond the pure reason, and that's why he named his book Critique of Pure Reason, and he followed it with another book, Critique of Practical Reason, and so on and so forth. Another characteristic of American culture is the always in progress, always in change, always wanting something new. They live in this house and then they want to move to a bigger house. Always there is something new, always there is change, always there is progress. And these values are highly valued in the American culture by Americans. And optimism too, emphasis on the future. They always try to have a better future, rather than, they don't focus on the past or on the present, but on the future. Like saying, they are not fatalist, of course, not fatalist. They believe that man is the master of his own destiny. This is completely opposite to some Oriental philosophy and values. Also, another feature of the American culture is the work hard and play hard. Work hard. It's they always say work hard and play hard. So the time of your leisure time, try to use it to play hard, to enjoy yourself. Why you deserve to enjoy yourself in your leisure time? Because you worked hard during your work time. And again, this something can be traced to their early settlers when they arrived to the New World, and they worked hard to tame nature, to make themselves the dominant people in that new land and the masters of that new land. And it's a culture that always valued this doing something. It's this doing something culture. Always try to do something. That's why when you meet somebody, after greeting the person, if you meet somebody for the first time, you would ask him, what do you do? About what you do, it's asking about what kind of profession, what kind of job he does or she does in life. So this culture of doing things is very important in the American culture. Also, the competitive nature competitive nature, there is this Vincent Lombardi, the late professional football coach. He said this interesting quote, winning isn't everything, it is the only thing. Winning isn't everything, it's the only thing. The American culture is a competitive culture, and we can really see that when we follow the American culture. There's always the top 10 songs. This is the national bestseller, the international bestseller. There is always competition. A life is nothing but a series of competitions, one after another. For competitive Americans who hate losing, everything in life is a game to win. But we don't see that in the French culture. So while it might be traced very clearly in the American culture, the French culture does not really value this competitive lifestyle. So we'll talk now about the value dimensions. The value dimensions by Geert Hofstede. When we study these cultural values, there are certain ways to study these cultural values when we try to make a comparison between one culture and another. For example, according to Hofstede, he classified them into 5 categories. The first is the power distance. I will talk about each one of them now in details. The power distance focuses on the human inequality. Then the uncertainty avoidance focus on the unknown future, and the individualism versus collectivism. It focuses on the primary groups you belong to, and also on the masculinity versus femininity, on the relationship between women and men, and on the gender roles and all of that, and also on the long-term versus short-term orientation, on the future, how you look at the future and the present and the past, and which one is more important to the person. So now we talk first about the power distance. The power distance, he divided them into high power distance and low power distance. High power distance is mainly the Oriental countries like China, Japan, Korea, and so on. People in these countries, in the Oriental countries in general, they believe that power and authorities are facts of life, and we are different. These cultures teach their members that people are not equal in this world. Social hierarchy is prevalent and institutionalizes inequality. And in organizations within high power distance cultures, more importance placed on status and rank. For example, and this is something when I say China, Japan, Korea, it's not only the Far East, it's also this characteristic or this feature is very strong in the Middle Eastern countries and also in the Arab countries, that they really attach so much importance to this hierarchy. And for example, if you want to achieve something, you want to get a good job, for example, you always have to find any acquaintance, somebody who is in a much higher social ranking, who would help you to get that job. So there is always this back door to get to a higher status. This kind of culture, you may find it in some Western cultures too, but again, we are talking about the general impression. It's not as strong as we see in many Oriental countries. So in Western countries, it's called low power distance. these lower power distance countries, they hold that inequality in society should be minimized, and they are guided mainly by laws and norms. There is no powerful individuals, powerful authoritative people who are above the law, for example. Nobody is above the law. But in many countries, in Oriental countries, we see some people, they violate the law, but they are above the law. In my country, for example, in Egypt, I can see that when I read the news, I follow the news, I can see that clearly. And we don't have this transparency that I can see in many Western countries. I'm not saying Western countries here perfect in this respect. They also have, again, some problems, but not as serious as the problems we face in Middle Eastern countries, for example, when we talk about this point. Subordinates consider superiors to be the same kind of people as they are, and superiors perceive their subordinates in the same way. That's why when we now we are talking about Western countries, and we take America as an example, okay? So, for example, during the presidency elections, we always see the American presidents going down the streets, trying to mingle with the workers, and the middle class people, dressed in a T-shirt or a simple shirt, being very casual with the people, not minding if they called him by his first name, and so on. So he doesn't act like a real president. There is, trying to be like one of them, or to show them that he is one of them, and he is not as powerful as he is. Of course, he is powerful and everything, but trying not to show it and to look like one of them. In large power distance societies, in large meaning in general, power distance in large power distance societies, the educational process is teacher-centered. The teacher initiates all communication, outlines the path of learning student should follow. This we see that in Oriental countries, like the Far East and the Middle East countries, that the education is teacher-centered education. The teacher is the one who is supposed to know everything, supposed to answer all the questions, supposed to have an answer for everything, and students should respect and should not contradict and so on. But in Western countries, it's not like that. In Western countries, it's about trying to find the impersonal truth that any person can have. And this, look at this study here, taxonomy. The countries here, starting from high power distance to low power distance, starting from Malaysia, and ending, number 1 is Malaysia, number 53 is Austria. This shows only around the first 50 countries in terms of high power distance to coming down to low power distance. If we read together these differences between small power distance, large power distance, in small power distance, the use of power should be legitimate and is subject to criteria of good and evil. So this small power distance is actually the Western countries, the Western culture. The large power distance is the Eastern countries. In the Eastern countries, power is a basic fact of society. antedating good or evil. Its legitimacy is irrelevant. In the Western, parents treat children as equals. In Eastern countries, parents teach children obedience, how to be obedient. In the Western country, Western culture, older people are neither respected nor feared. In Eastern countries, older people are both respected and feared. Here, student-centered education, their teacher-centered education. Hierarchy means inequality of roles established for convenience. Hierarchy means existential inequality. And so on and so forth. If we go through this table here, we'll really familiarize ourselves more with the differences between the small power distance and large power distance, or high power, low power, and high power distance between Eastern cultures and Western cultures. Corruption rare, for example, scandals and end political careers. And we still remember some political scandals that ended the political careers of some American presidents, like Nixon, for example, and his scandal, his political scandal in the 70s. The income distribution in society rather even. In the East, the income distribution in society very uneven. In the West, religion stressing equality of believers. In the East, religions with a hierarchy of priests, and so on. The second thing is uncertainty avoidance. Uncertainty avoidance, in high uncertainty avoidance, in Eastern countries, in an Eastern culture. In an Eastern culture, the societies try to avoid uncertainty. The uncertainty is the future, is the unknown future. Unknown future. We don't know what we have or what will happen in the future. So it's uncertain. Everything is uncertain, and these cultures avoid uncertainty, meaning avoid this unknown future, by providing stability for their members, for their citizens, through established formal social protocols and tolerance of deviant ideas and behaviors, emphasizing consensus and resistance to change. If we look at the low uncertainty avoidance, which is in the West, countries like Sweden, Denmark, and so on, and Finland, the United States, they are considered low uncertainty avoidance. Why? They are tolerant of the unusual. They dare to face the unknown, what will happen tomorrow, and they are not as threatened by different ideas and people, and they prize initiative to take the initiative, and willing to take risks, and less constrained by social protocol. If we try to look at this and try this uncertainty avoidance and try to apply it to what we see in the world right now, we find how the West, for example, almost all the Western countries, they had a very similar attitude towards the pandemic. That really fits this description. I find it fits this description very well, that they are willing to take risks. Look at this. Just a few minutes ago, I talked about this individualism. They prize individualism so much at the expense of anything else, even if it's their own life. So that's why they dare to not to wear masks, for example, and they took it to the street to demonstrate because they don't want to this social distance and all of that. This fits the description here that they prize initiative and they are willing to take risks in the way they handled this pandemic, the universal pandemic. But in some Eastern countries, it's the other way around. There is no tolerance for this unknown, for no tolerance for any risk. And as this you can see in this screen, intolerance of deviant ideas and behaviors, emphasizing consensus and resistance to change. Like this, for example, here in Hong Kong and in China too, we have this zero tolerance policy. Zero tolerance policy. This is exactly what this slide is talking about. Intolerance of having any risk. And risking the lives of so many people. So there must be some rules, there must be some regulations, and all the people have to follow these regulations. In the West is completely different. They want to go against these regulations and to take the risk. Two completely different ways of handling the pandemic, handling the crisis. And again, here we are trying just to understand how two different cultures react and behaves in the face of this pandemic and these problems. And again, here is Greece. This table starts with Greece and ends with Singapore. Greece as an oriental country, even though it falls in Europe, but it belongs to this category, the high uncertainty avoidance, and Singapore belongs to low uncertainty avoidance. And here's some differences between, you see, some scholars, they call it low uncertainty avoidance, meaning low, and some scholars call it, instead of weak uncertainty, so call it low uncertainty. And instead of strong uncertainty, some call it also high uncertainty. Like just earlier, I said this large society. Actually, large here is also another. It's how different scholars used. Some scholars would say large societies. Others would say high power instead of large power society. No, high power society, and so on. It's just different ways of using the terms. So here, the weak uncertainty avoidance, that's the West. The strong uncertainty avoidance, that's the East. The uncertainty inherent in life is accepted, and each day is taken as it comes. This is the Western culture. The Eastern culture, the uncertainty inherent in life is felt as a continuous threat that must be fought. In the West is lower stress, self-control, low anxiety. The opposite in the East. Higher scores on subjective health and well-being, tolerance of deviant persons and ideas, comfortable with ambiguity and chaos. And this chaos is really what defines many countries in the West in the way they handle the corona pandemic, the chaos. Teachers may say, I don't know. Teachers supposed to have all the answers in the East. Changing jobs, no problem. In the East, they would stick to the job even if they don't like it. Dislike of rules, written or unwritten. In the East, there must be rules, written rules, even if some people will not really follow it, but everything must be written in regulations. In politics, citizens feel and are seen as competent towards authority. In religion, philosophy, and science, relativism and empiricism. Everything is relative. and everything is known through practical experiment, through empiricism. But in the Eastern societies, usually the belief in the ultimate truth and grand theories is what dominates the culture. The third thing is the individualism versus collectivism. Individualism, again, is what defines the Western culture. Collectivism is what defines the Eastern culture. Individualism, the relationship between ties between individuals and relationship are loose. The individuals look after themselves and their immediate families only, if they do. In the collective culture, the people are integrated into strong, cohesive in-groups. So this in-groups is related to this collective culture, while the out-group is what relates to the individualistic culture. As I said, individualism prevails in Western countries and collectivism in Eastern countries. Singapore or Japan, for example, is this kind of countries that stand in the middle. I would read a quote here that this collectivism, or culture of collectivism, is what prevails in a society like Egyptian society, that even in illness, Egyptians prefer company, a stream of friends and relatives who bring him soda, food, aspirin, and vice will surround a man who has a headache or a fever, just a headache or a fever, and that patient will get all kind of attention from his close friends and family members. Hospitals are crowded with residents and friends visiting patients. I find it very true, since as a person coming from Egypt, I find this quote here really reflects the Egyptian life very well, describe it very well. And in terms of individualism and collectivism, this we find that this table here, the United States comes on the top when it comes to individualism, followed by Australia and so on, and ends with Guatemala, Ecuador, Guatemala, and so on. That's they care more about collectivism or less about individualism. The difference between these two, everyone is supposed to take care of himself or herself or his immediate family. This is in the individualistic countries, meaning the West. In the collective culture countries, the East, it's the people are born into extended families or clans, and they are supposed to protect each other. Here in the West, it's the I, but in the East, it's the we. The right of privacy, stress on belonging. In the West, a person speak one's mind is something positive and healthy. In the East, harmony should always be maintained, and so on. I don't want to read everything there, but I think the idea is clear. So number 4, the masculinity versus the femininity. Most psychologists and anthropologists, they agree that many masculine and feminine behaviors are learned and meditated and formatted, patterned by the society and by the cultural norms. And masculinity, we find it again in most of Eastern countries, and femininity is most of the Western countries. A feminine overview, a feminine worldview is or maintains that men need not be assertive and that they can assume nurturing roles. It also promotes sexual equality. These countries here starts with the masculine culture, the masculine society starts for Japan comes on top when it comes to masculine society. Sweden shows at the end here as a feminine society, meaning a society that values this feminine culture and the equality between men and women, and the almost disappearance of the gender differences in the gender role. So here's some differences between this femininity, which prevails in the Western culture, and masculinity in the Eastern culture. For example, here, feminine emotional and social role differentiation between the genders, and in Eastern countries, the maximum emotional and social role differentiation. So you see, social role differentiation goes to the maximum between the two genders, meaning the gender role of the men and women. Or men and women, they are so huge. The role of man is so different, completely comes in contrast to the role of women in a masculine society. Like, for example, men and women should be modest and caring in a feminine society, feminine-dominated society. Men should be, and women may be, assertive and ambitious in a masculine society. And so on, like both fathers and mothers deal with facts and feelings. Both boys and girls may cry, but neither should fight. This is in the West. In the East, girls cry, boys don't. Boys should fight back, girls shouldn't fight. And so on. And this point, I covered it also last week, so no need to go through it line by line. But I think again the idea is clear. In the West, for example, boys and girls are encouraged to speak up their mind and to speak loud. But it's quite the opposite in Eastern countries. Especially the girls are not supposed to talk, and when they talk, they have to talk in a very low voice, and so on. Long and short-term orientation, and this is the final factor in this Hofstede value dimensions. And actually, he was criticized for the last four dimensions, that he was biased towards Western values. So he included this, the last fifth factor, the long and short-term orientation, and he focused on Eastern elements like the Confucian dynamism. And he called it the Chinese Value Survey. Chinese Value Survey, it's developed by Michael Harris Bond in Hong Kong from values suggested by Chinese scholars. Members of these cultures do value social order and long-range goals. They put for themselves and plan some long-range, long-term goals that will not be achieved within a day or two, goals that may be achieved in 10 years, for example. And we find this in the mainland China, in Hong Kong, Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, and so on. On the other side, the opposite of this understanding of this culture is the culture of short-term orientation found in the UK, the US, and other Western countries, and the Philippines in Asia. They don't put too much or attach too much importance to the present, to what we have now, or even the past, or on the status. They try to postpone the old age, and they want these short-term goals. They put and plan for themselves short-term goals, and they seek quick gratification of their needs. Again, here this table, most important events in life occurred in the past or take place now. The long-term orientation, that means the Eastern countries' orientations. Most important events in life will occur in the future. That's why they put a plan for the future. immediate need gratification expected, need gratification deferred until later. Here, always look at the left side as the Western culture and the right side as the Eastern culture. There are universal guidelines about what is good and evil. What one thinks and says should be true. Children should learn tolerance. This is, sorry, just now I said the right and left. No, it's the other way around. The short-term orientation is actually the Eastern countries. What one thinks and says should be true. Children should learn tolerance and respect social spending and consumption, unstructured problem solving, in business stress on short-term profits, and so on. Family life on the other side, we can read, for example, traditions are adaptable to changed circumstances. Family life guided by shared tasks. What one does should be virtuous, and so on. Now we move to another, after all these 5 factors we have detailed, this Geert Hofstede, now we move to another, or some other scholars, Klackhons and Strodbeck. They have 5 dimensions. The first is human nature based on human nature, and the second is based on humankind and nature. For example, human nature, the first thing, human nature are either evil or good and evil, mixture of good and evil, or basically good. The human being, humankind and nature, people subjugated to nature, or people in harmony with nature, or people the master of nature. In sense of time, when we talk about the relationship, our relationship with time, we are either past oriented or present oriented or future oriented. In terms of activity, we focus either on being, like, for example, how to spend our leisure time, the present time, or being in becoming, like in Buddhist, for example, like having meditation in order to become better people, or in doing, meaning doing something, always trying to do something, like in American culture. Social relationships, we are either authoritarian or group oriented, or we belong to this individualistic culture. So they're always trying these 5 categories. Each one of them asks a certain question, like, what is the character of human nature? What is the relation of humankind to nature? What is the orientation toward time and the value placed on activity and the relationship of people to each other? So, as I said, in terms of human nature orientation, evil in America, for example, Christianity is the prevailing religion, and these Puritan ancestors, they put stress. We're talking about now about the first settlers. They put stress on the human nature as an evil nature, and this original sin and all of that. But recently, let's say in the last 100 years, they started to believe that we are perfectible and we can be Christians can not necessarily to be fully evil. The second type is this good and evil, and this we find in Taoism, and also it's also the Islamic concept is very close to that, and also the Native American culture. Like there is a story that or a saying I read about this Native American myth that inside each of us there are two wolves inside each of us, and they fight each other. They are hungry, and the one you feed is the one who will win. Yeah, the one you feed is the one who will win. This really falls in line with the Islamic concept too. Also, we have in Islam very similar ideas that human beings can be either good or bad. It depends on the person and what path that person would choose. But we find in Confucianism and Buddhism, they state that human nature is originally good. In the way we treat or interact with nature, we are either subject to nature, like in the Oriental philosophy, for example, believing that they are one with nature. They believe in fatalism. They worship nature sometimes, or cooperation with nature, having harmony with nature, like in China, Japan, Thailand, and so on, or controlling nature, like in Western cultures, tame the wilderness, conquer the space, and so on. In terms of time orientation, the past orientation, paying so much attention to the past. The past this is a proverb, Chinese proverb. The past is as clear as a mirror, the future as dark as lacquer. So the Shintoism in Japan, for example, the worship of ancestors, the monarchy in the UK, all this respects the past. There is another type, present orientation. The immediate moment has the most significance. We see that in the Philippines and the most Latin American culture. The future orientation emphasizes what is to come and expect of the future, like in America, like this proverb, an American proverb, if at first you don't succeed, try again. In terms of activity orientation, there is the being orientation, that people focus on the present time, what to do at present, how to spend the leisure time. And these people who belong to this culture, they would rather spend their leisure time with their families rather than work. Another type, being in becoming. We find this in the meditation in Hinduism and Buddhism, like meditating in order to become a better person. So it focuses on the innate quality. And the doing orientation and describe the external activities one does and the action one does, and this in the American culture. Like this quote by Newman, the child who speaks, this is about an example of this doing orientation. The child who speaks when the teacher requests a response is rewarded. The one who ponders is often considered withdrawn, problematic. The educational system in America appears to favor students who have the immediate answer, not those who take time to consider other questions. Then we move to another scholar, whole context and his context orientation. There is also, he divided the society and the cultures into high context and low context culture. He says a high context communication or message is one in which most of the information is already in the person, meaning he doesn't reveal it. He gives you a cryptic message, doesn't reveal all the information, while very little is in the coded, explicitly transmitted part of the message. A low context communication is just the opposite, meaning the mass of the information is vested in the explicit code. High context cultures like Japan, like China, like Arab countries, and so on, Korean and so on, we don't reveal everything in the message. We don't reveal everything. People of this culture are homogeneous. They have similar experiences and information. They rely on how something is said, not what is said. How is said, not what is said. And from how it's said, people of the same culture try to decipher that message and to decode it. to decipher the codes of that message. In low context orientation, low context culture, especially like German, Swiss, Scandinavian, they are so frank and straightforward and open, and they say everything in the message. The message doesn't hide anything. It just spill everything out. Okay, so this is quite the opposite. And if we look at this high context culture, we find Japan comes on top, then China, Korea, African American, Native American, Arabs, Greek, and so on. We move to another scholar, and this is the final scholar I would finish with. He talked about something called face and face work. Face, the term face, as he said, I quote, the term face is a metaphor for the self-image. Your face is your image, the image you want to project to the society. And the face work is the construction of that face, of that image, how you would construct it. So this also influenced by the culture, by your culture and the culture of the society you live in, and they vary from one culture and one society to another. He says, since US Americans do not normally rely on group affiliation, they don't affiliate themselves to certain groups because they have this individualistic culture. For their own identity or social support, they are less concerned with how they influence someone else's face. In collectivistic cultures, group membership is normally the primary source of identity and status. In Chinese culture, extreme politeness is part of face saving. In Chinese culture and Japanese culture, people are so respectable to other people in order to give them face and also to save their own face. So this is the difference between the Western culture and Eastern culture. In the Western culture is defined by what we call guilt culture. Guilt culture. In Oriental culture in general, whether it's China, Japan, Korea, in the Arab countries, the Middle East, these countries, this kind of culture, generally speaking, are defined by this shame culture. Shame culture here meaning a person would not want to be humiliated in public, would not want to lose face. Julian, nobody doesn't want to lose face. Even if a person does something wrong, but that person doesn't want to be humiliated in public. So this is what will hurt more. But in the Western countries, because they don't really care about how other people would think of them, so because they value this individualistic culture more than anything else, and their individual freedom and so on. So what hurts them more is this guilt culture, is to feel guilty, not to feel ashamed of doing something. So these are just some questions for you to ponder and to think about. List some Chinese cultural values and patterns. Mention some behaviors in the Chinese culture that reflect collectivism, uncertainty, avoidance, and masculinity. Examine your behavior and determine how well you fit into the various degrees of time orientation. Think about a recent conflict situation in which you participated, for example, an argument with your spouse, your parents, or a stranger. What communication strategies did you use to give, maintain, or take face? How does learning, and so on. I want to leave some time for your questions. I don't want to read everything, but I think that's it. And everything here, I have the sources for everything, but when I used the full screen, all the sources disappeared actually, so I could not read the names while giving the talk. But when you have the PPT, you can take your time going through the sources here, as you can see here. So if you have any questions, I would like to leave this final few minutes for you to give your question and to raise your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Goda. I realized actually that you are in a wonderful position of bridging the three cultures. For example, the Western culture, the Eastern culture, like where you are located now, and also you are born in Egypt. It was something like Islamic culture. So Western, Eastern, and Islamic. You are joined with three of them, all of them. So I think
Yeah.
you're in a good position to deliver the lectures on culture understandings. So my personal question is, we know that Japan have enjoyed a profound influence from ancient China, especially in the Tang dynasties. And so it was very similar from the perspective of culture to China. For example, it was also a shame-oriented culture, which was uh, different with the West, which is something like a guilt-oriented culture. So my question is, um, nowadays Japan is under tremendous influence of the Western culture. Of course, they have been doing so for hundreds of years now. So, how many other centuries will cost for Japan to turn from a shame culture to a guilt culture? Would you believe, or it was not possible at all?
I don't think it will. It will, they will, because especially Japanese people and Japanese culture, just like Chinese culture. I don't think there will come a day when Japan or China or even Korea will be completely washed by Western ideas and Western philosophy, and they may, yes, learn and adapt to some. They may adopt some ideas and methodologies, but not to the extent that their own native culture and traditions will be washed away completely. I don't think this day will come. And it seems that even day by day now, every nation now sticks to her own native culture, whether it's Japan or China or Korea or in the Middle East also. So we find that what Samuel Huntington said in his book, Clash of Civilization, is quite true in a sense. That the coming clash of civilizations, he predicted that back in the 90s, in 1993. While we don't really advocate that clash, we don't want to encourage that clash. We always call for harmonies. We always try to understand why we learn other people's language, why we learn a Western language. It's in order to communicate well with other cultures, with them, in order to understand. We study Western culture not in order to clash with them, but in order to have harmony with the West. So we advocate this harmony, but whatever clash will happen, it will be mainly based on this clash of civilization, based on ideologies, based on different ideologies. So I don't think there will be a time when Japan or China or any Oriental country will be completely westernized and move from being a shamed culture society to guilt culture society. I don't think so.
Thank you very much.
But of course, I don't support any clash, but it's coming. We try to understand. We don't try to encourage something else. But when you see something coming, you analyze why it happens. When there is a conflict, your job as a scholar is to analyze and understand. So this is my understanding of what might happen in the future. I don't think the Western civilization will be dominant in the East. As I think I see that to be very honest and frank, I see that the Western civilization living its twilight years. I think this is the Western civilization now on the other side of the hill, going down.
Thank you for your answer.
Thank you.
If I could ask a question, thank you so much for the lecture. And just two questions, actually. So Hofstede had 6 dimensions that I've always, studied and used. And I wanted to get your understanding of that, that 6th one, if you are familiar with the indulgence versus restraint. Then from a perspective of business, and I've worked for Deutsche Bank. We had offices around the world. Such a tough position to be in with our businesses, trying to basically, I would say, respect all the cultures that are involved. And, being over here now and working in our program, we have both the, Western culture and the Eastern culture. So what do you think are the greatest challenges to organizations and businesses given the globalization movement and the differences in the different cultures?
The main challenges faced by business companies in time of globalization, you mean?
Yes.
You mentioned a 6th, actually, a 6th element dimension, and I only listed some scholars, but if you still can see the PPT, there are other scholars whom I did not include in my PowerPoint because of the time. We don't have enough time, but if you are interested in reading more about this topic, you can find online this book called Communication Between Cultures. I quoted from the 7th edition and the 9th edition. Maybe what you said also is mentioned in the 9th edition. Actually, this different dimensions, and we can say it's like it's a hindrance in the communication between companies coming from different parts of the world or having different cultures. But what is the most important or the main struggle, main challenge for these companies in communication, right? That was your question, right?
In communication, are definitely, they got to communicate, but definitely with the different cultures. So if you, give the distinctions between the East and the West and the distinctions between the different countries, you have more globalization now than you had back then with Hofstede, et cetera. And so there are definitely some, possibilities of clashes within companies, or a lot of concessions that have to be made. What do you think? From your perception about the major challenges that you see going forward with globalization?
I think they all add up, and all these dimensions, all of them, it's very difficult to see which one is is more important than the other, because each one of them is just adds or gives us a bit of understanding of the other culture, and we need to know or to have an overall view and understanding of the other culture without focusing on one thing, because they all add up. For example, if you meet some people from you're having your own company, and you meet people coming from different country, and you take them out for dinner, And knowing about their culture shows from the first moment you meet that person. You have to understand their social values. Are you going to shake hands with that person?
Mhm.
Or are you going to give that person a hug? What the social distance? How far are you going, or how close are you going to stand from that person? Are you going to give him a name card or not? Or you understand the way you understand socially. Now we're talking just about the first impression, the first moment you meet that person. When you take that person out for a dinner, what are you going to order? What kind of food are you going to order? And before you order the foods, where or the position that person will sit, where will you let him sit? Will you let him sit in front of the door with his back to the door? Because the one who is in front, who's facing the door is usually the big boss. In an Eastern society is the big boss. So because usually they eat around a round table. Okay, so where you will ask him to sit, on your right hand side or your left hand side? What kind of food are you going to order? You need to know also his religious orientation. If he's Muslim, you cannot order pork. You are offending him. Not only that, you cannot order any food made with or cooked with this pork oil. Not only the meat, but so what I want to say, you need to have an overall understanding of his culture in terms of his social values, cultural values, in terms of his religious, everything, all in all. It's very difficult to pinpoint only one element and to say this is the most important thing. I think, but I find if I have to choose one, if you ask me, I would say the religious. To me personally, the religious factor here is more sensitive than anything, and also the gender, like for example keeping social distance or something like that, or the way for example a woman would treat a man or receive a man, or a man would receive a woman. The relationship between the social relationship between men and women is also sensitive. For example, if a man from the East or the West would meet a Muslim woman, that person should not even think of giving that person, of that Western or that Muslim woman, a hug. Because some of them may even refuse shaking hands with a man. So this is very sensitive issues. We need to be aware of these small, tiny things, but even though they are tiny, you may overlook them, but they are very sensitive and may embarrass the person. The person may embarrass himself if he tries to hug or kiss or shake hands with a Muslim woman, and then she refuses, and he insults her, and she has to embarrass him, and it's an embarrassing situation for everybody. So I find this kind of things very, very sensitive, that are related to religion and related to the gender, whether it's a man or woman.
Okay. Thank you.
What is your second question? You said you have two questions.
No, I asked you about the other dimension of indulgence and restraint. And then I asked you about basically, what your perception is of, so cultural differences that you need to be concerned with in globalization. Thank you.
Yeah, regarding your first question, I couldn't include everything, but if you can see the PPT now, you can download these two, or I can send to you as PDF if you wish.
I'm familiar with them. I'm familiar with Hastid. I use him in so many of the classes and lectures. I was just wondering about that last one, if you had any thoughts about the indulgence and restraint. But that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Good, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to say that thank you very much for your well-organized and clearly presented lecture. I'm very interested in it, and I learned a lot from it. It's very informative. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I would like to exchange ideas with you. I'd like to share with you what I think about the distinction between cultures, mainly Western and Eastern cultures. Just now you mentioned that, cultures, different cultures can be, different in the following ways, like between high power distance, low power distance. Yes. Yes. And the strong, strong or high uncertainty avoidance, or weak or low uncertainty avoidance, individualism and collectivism, and so on. Speaking of this, I think I assume maybe the distinction is made out of convenience for research or studies. The real picture or the real case is much more complicated. As we know, yes, cultures are changing, and there are so many elements involved, and people from different backgrounds, even in the same nation, they take very different opinions or values or attitudes and so on. Yes. So speaking of individualism and collectivism, I remember clearly an article entitled "Thoughts on Reclaiming the American Dream" by Barack Obama. This is taken from his book, The Audacity of Hope. Yes. In this book, he mentioned that Americans, they do not only have individualistic values, they also have communal values. In other words, in his opinion, Americans, in Americanism maybe, or in American culture, they are twin stands, individualistic and communal values. The two, values are actually interrelated to each other. Individualism is bound by a set of communal values. So in his opinion, American culture emphasizes both. Yes, and they are countervailing values, which can hold excess in control. So neither of the two will go extreme. That's his comments on American culture. Yeah.
Yeah, you are right. And that actually what he says doesn't really contradict what those scholars said, because they also admit that it's so challenging, it's so difficult to put forth these characteristics and these features of certain cultures, because they know any culture is a dynamic thing, always in the process of change. And they know that, and this is what also they say in their books, that some nations, they have many ethnic groups. So it's almost impossible to pass one general statement that will cover everything. And they only what they say is just the general outlines that define that culture in general, but they know that there will be so many contradictions, so many individuals who don't fit in this definition, this general definition. And in America also, even though they value the general outline, the mainstream feature that defines this culture is individualism. But Barack Obama, don't forget that Barack Obama is not, he's half African. He's half African. So part of his heritage what he says also reflects his personal opinion and reflects also his own heritage. And so part of half of his heritage can also go back to Africa and this collectivistic culture. And America itself, apart from that, America itself consists of so many ethnic groups, so many migrants coming from different parts of the world. There are millions of Muslims who live there now. So definitely they are integral part of the American society. You cannot say that they are not Americans. So now America now is so different from America 50 years ago.
Yeah.
It's different. So America now, yes, we are just talking, as you said, it's for the sake of study, but we know that doesn't really describe the realistic situation of what America is right now. No, America now has so many ethnic groups, and those ethnic groups, they still adhere and stick to their own native cultures, and they don't quite integrate into the Western culture, especially the parts that really contradicts their own native beliefs and native values. We find that also not only in America, in France. If you are a bit familiar with the situation in France and how the Muslim community, the French Muslim community there, they stick to their own culture, their own heritage, their own cultural values, their own religious values, but that contradicts the French, let's say, the French state values, their secular values. And that secular system wants to impose their own values on the Muslim community, which again, there is a contradiction here. There is contradiction. And this contradiction is so clear in the French society more than any other society. In America, the secularism in America is not like the laicity in France. And in America, yes, as you said, so many ethnic groups, they stick to their own native culture, native cultural values, and integral part of this, their native cultural value is collectivism. But when we say this individualism, we are talking about the pure American values that we can trace back to the early first settlers. First arrived to America, and they tried to impose these values for 300 years or so. But so many things changed, especially about so many things are not 100% true, like this equal opportunities, as I said during my talk. Something they strive to have, but do they really have it? There is a big question mark about it.
Yeah, thank you very much. I can't deny that Obama's view of American cultural values has much to do with his own ethnic or cultural backgrounds. His experience in Hawaii, Indonesia, Africa, and so on, all contribute to his views of American values and so on.
He's so different from other presidents. He's so different from other presidents. Even though he had to fit in the general,
the mainstream.
He had to fit in, but he's still unique, I would say.
Yeah, true. Yes. So maybe when we talk about the distinctions between cultures or the 5 dimensions, maybe we need to go further. We need to go in depth. For example, we need to talk about the historical background, the historical period or certain group of people. Maybe we can make the questions or the illustrations more, convincing or, related to a certain background or context. Yes. Thank you. Good. Thank you. Good.
It needs more than 1.5 hours. It needs more than 90 minutes to cover all these points. I had to skip.
I understand.
I had to skip so many things because of the time. But indeed, yes. Each point of them, like this, the slide you are seeing now, each point really, we can talk a lot about each point of these. There are so many things to be said, but we just have to mention the general ideas.
I understand. I understand. Oh, by the way, looking forward to meeting you here in Changchun next semester.
Thank you. Are you Julia? Are you Julia? Or?
No, I'm not Julia. I'm Hongwei.
Hongwei. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, both of us are from the Center for Translation Research and Studies. Yeah.
Zhang Hongwei.
Yes. Yeah, right. Yes.
He is here. Thank you. Good.
Hi, Julia.
No. Thank you. That's all for my questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Zhang Hongwei. Thank you.
Thank you. Good.
Thank you. And is there any other questions? Hello. Yeah.
张老师。
我没有问题了。
So the speaker can collect the questions or call it a day.
All right. So shall we end here and we see each other again next week?
Wonderful.
If no more questions, so shall we end here?
Okay.
Thank you all. And I will.
Thank you.
And I will see you next week. Thank you. Thank you all.
See you next week.
See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
فكر في واجبك كما تفكر في حقك، واعمل طلبا للإتقان لا طلبا للشهرة والجزاء، ولا تنتظر من الناس أكثر مما يحق للناس أن ينتظروه منك.